like to call the meeting to order. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Georgie, would you do a roll call, please?
Councilmember Garola. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Villasenor.
Here.
Mayor Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Brogy. Here. Councilmember Mendez.
Here. Okay, I will move to approval agenda. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion. I have a second. We'll go on to public comments. Public comments on this special meeting is limited to addressing only the subject matter of the public hearing being held at this special meeting. We're going to go to number 6A, closed session, special meeting. We're going into closed session. The council will conduct a closed session meeting because there is a significant exposure to litigation in one case. We're going to go into closed session. Closed session. There was nothing to report out. There is nothing to report. We're going to adjourn to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is at 6:30 in 45 minutes. Meeting adjourned. 6:30. It's in 45 minutes. Oh, and a half, 15 minutes. Call the meeting to order. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I forgot to read something at the meeting. We had a special meeting beforehand. City Council held a special meeting today at 5 o'clock and met in closed session prior to the scheduled regular meeting of this agenda. Okay, with that, we're going to take a roll call.
Councilmember Garola. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Villaseñor.
Here.
Mayor Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Brogy.
Here.
Councilmember Mendez.
Here. Okay, well, move to approval agenda. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to move on to presentations. People's Choice Award Park and Rec's Trunk or Treat presented by Cultural Arts and Recreation Commissioners.
Okay.
I think you can, have a presentation? Okay.
So good evening, council and community members. I would like to introduce Commissioner Greg Agostolini. He has been a key player for the Parks and Recreations Department. He and Nancy Hernandez Rodriguez have been actively helping city staff organize the past two events, and he will be presenting the award of the People's Choice for the Trunk or Treat event. So.
Okay. I'd like to present the award for the Trunk or Treat event, and that name is Agostinelli. That's okay, that's okay. Lots of people get it wrong. I am filling in for someone, so I'm not 100% sure what else I will be doing.
So we have a representative from the Citizens Patrol today, and they were the award winners this night, and so we will be presenting the award to them, and thank you very much for participating. I think the representative is here tonight, is that correct? Okay, Celia, right? Elizabeth? Okay. So Elizabeth, congratulations. You are the winner. The citizens have elected you, and we do have a award that is actually on its way down. So we will be presenting you that.
And as soon as he gets here, I'll give it to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Should we wait? How soon? How soon, Erica? Okay. Should we go? Should we? Okay, we're going to move ahead, and as soon as she gets down here, she can present that award. We're going to move on to public comments. I would like to say we have a Spanish translator here to be used by anybody who needs it, and if you need it, just request it. Okay. With that, we're going to open the public comments. We have no regular public comments. We're going to move on to our number 7, City Council reports and recommendations and comments. Do we have anything by council?
I'll make one, actually, no, this is more on our end of agenda around commissions and board reports, so I'm sorry, Mayor.
Okay.
I'll wait for that.
Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to number 8, consent calendar. Can I have a motion? So moved. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Move on to item number 8. 8A. What? Okay.
May I?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt it, but we're going to split right here again.
On behalf of the Arts Commission and Parks and Rec, I hereby present you with this wonderful award.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, seeing that, we're going to move on to item 9A, new business, third public hearing to receive input regarding the adoption of district-based election systems.
Kristen, please come on up and take over. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Let me get these slides up. Okay. So this is the third public hearing out of 5 on the transition to district-based elections for the city of Fillmore. Again, my name is Kristen Parks, and I am a demographer consultant with National Demographics Corporation. So tonight we're going to have a quicker review of the process and the legal requirements. There is a public mapping tool available on the city website that I do want to draw the public's attention to. But really, the main focus of my presentation will be on presenting the draft maps that our team has developed as a first round, and that is what we want to invite feedback this evening on, is those draft maps. So this process did begin last month, and we held 2 public hearings. This is the 3rd public hearing, and the next public hearing will be November 28th. And I do want to highlight that if any members of the public do want to draw their own map, now that they see the maps that we've drawn and they say, oh, well, I could do a lot better, please do. We encourage you to do that. We just need to get them by Friday because, everyone is going to go home for Thanksgiving and so if we can get those maps beforehand, that's important because they do have to be publicly posted 7 days prior to the November 28th meeting, right? So that's November 21st. So that's actually before Thanksgiving. They'll have to be posted. So please submit those maps. Even if they're incomplete or partial, we can still present those to council just so they can get an idea of what you are thinking a district or 2 or all 5 should look like. So if council is able to choose a final map December 12th, that map will be introduced by ordinance, and these by-district elections would begin to roll out in 2024. So next year there would be 3 council seats up by district, and then in 2026 there would be 2. So that would complete the rollout of districts. So that's the timeline. As we try to draw 5 districts for the city of Fillmore, we do have to first and foremost ensure that we're complying with federal law. What that means is that each of the 5 districts need to be relatively equal in population size, and we're looking for each of those districts to be about 3,292 people each, right? Plus or minus maybe 100 people or fewer. We are also complying with the Federal Voting Rights Act, meaning that we're not drawing districts that dilute voting power of any protected classes of voters, nor are we drawing any district boundaries based solely or primarily on race or ethnicity. There's a lot of other factors to consider, and the state of California actually lays out 4 factors that we have to consider by law in order of priority or importance. First is geographic contiguity. So to the extent that the city boundaries are contiguous, then the districts should also be. Second, we want to try whenever possible to avoid dividing neighborhoods and communities. And this is where we really need to hear from council and the public, because sometimes we have to divide a neighborhood to achieve that population balance. So when we're looking at neighborhoods, usually you never are able to end up with a map that doesn't divide any neighborhood because neighborhoods aren't equal in population size. So when the law says minimize that division, it means if one map is dividing several neighborhoods versus another map is only making a division to one neighborhood that's significant, you want to try to probably move in the direction of only dividing one neighborhood if possible. So I think you can see that as you look at the maps. Third, we really want to try to draw boundaries that are easily identifiable by residents. So we don't want to make this transition any more confusing to residents. We want to make sure that council district boundaries follow major roads and other logical things, the train tracks, the waterways, things that everyone's familiar with in town. And finally, last on the list in importance is that to the extent possible, districts should be geographically compact, meaning that that those boundary lines should not snake around and avoid a certain area to take in a farther away area. So I can show you in the draft maps where we have some districts that may not be compact. And it is last on the list, so it's less important than keeping a neighborhood together. But oftentimes when you keep a neighborhood together, you get a district that's compact. So these are our legal requirements. I went over it really quickly because I've presented it twice before here, but it is really important because we can refer back to these legal requirements as we look at the maps. So there is a public tool that is relatively easy to use where you can draw your own district map. For members of the public, if you want to draw your own districts and you don't want to do it online, then by all means, please draw it on a piece of paper, just label the streets. And even if your map is not population balanced, we will still present it officially for council consideration on the 28th. Just please try to get it to us by the end of this week. So this is what the tool looks like. It is on the city website. And there's also on the city website an interactive map. So all of the draft maps and demographic data that we have are on this map, which is kind of just like a Google map, but it's nice because you can zoom in, whereas when you're looking at the PDFs, you can't zoom in and out in the same way that you can here, and you can overlay maps on top of each other to see where they're different and that sort of thing. So those are the online tools, and then there are 3 maps this evening that we're presenting. These are by no means the only maps that are possible to be drawn. The green map and then the yellow and orange maps, which are actually, as you see, relatively similar, yellow and orange. And we really want to hear from council and the public. Maybe you like District 1 in the green map, but District 4 in the orange map. So we want to hear what suggestions you have for either revising one or more of these maps, or perhaps taking a different approach altogether. So I look forward to hearing your feedback. The green map is the one that has the lowest total deviation, though all of these are well within our legal limit on population deviation. The green map tries to keep the northern part of Fillmore together to the best extent that we can, and that's really the main driver of this map. But then, for instance, you do get a District 2 here that's really not compact, right? It's definitely looking a little less compact there. And one of the challenges is that when you think about Fillmore, you might think, oh, well, everything south of 126, might make sense in a district. But then you're getting there's actually too much population, and the same is sort of true of the northern part of town. So you can't create huge districts. You have to try to stay close to that, like 3,300 number. And then we also know that in the southern part of town is where there's more new development. And so if you want to look ahead 10 years, you would maybe want to ensure that the districts that are south of 126 are not overpopulated now, because that would mean they would even be more unbalanced 10 years from now after the 2030 census, which would be the next time you have to look at these maps. There are some strange shaped census blocks that also limit us here, and I will point those out if they do come up in discussion, because we're not working with always square or rectangular shapes here. There's some shapes that we have to follow, we can't divide, that are rather strange. Those come from the Census Bureau. We can't change those. So the orange map, you can see then takes in a very different approach, and is splitting North Fillmore a lot, the orange and the yellow map, but trying to have a District 1 that is more on the western side of town, and also trying to unite in the southern part into a District 4, and not separating out the mobile homes from the other development, the other residential areas there, and putting all of that together, trying to have a little more of a central district with District 3. And you can sort of start to see some of the census block challenges. As you can see in District 1, there are, as we follow along the railroad tracks, there's some strange shaped blocks there. All of this we can zoom in and out if we need to. I can go ahead and open up that interactive map, but just so you can see broad strokes of really two different approaches, because the yellow map is very similar to the orange map. It's sort of just shifting a couple blocks here and there. So really you have two approaches. There's the green map approach, and then there's the yellow and orange approach. These are not, again, the only approaches we could take, but they're our starting point. So I look forward to taking feedback on this, and then council will direct NDC specifically what to come back with at the next meeting. And again, if any public maps are received before that next meeting, we will come back with those as well. The other thing that we have to consider that is not on these PowerPoint slides, but is on the PDF maps, is the election sequencing. So keeping in mind that when we do adopt districts, we also have to adopt basically a schedule of elections, and each of those 5 districts have to be assigned to hold an election either in 2024 or 2026. And while it's common to consider things like, is there an area that's had historically lower turnout or representation, and maybe put those areas in the 2024 cycle, because that's the presidential election, that's when there's more turnout. We also look at where the current council members live. That's standard practice, at least through the end of this year, until that's changed by state law next year. But standard practice is, if there's one council member residing in the district, then that member's election year will be the year assigned to the district. we do get into challenges here because you do have two members that are within the same census block, which is our smallest unit of geography. And so that poses a challenge where council has to decide that that district, is it going to be 2024 or 2026? And, this chart of options is really, maybe confusing to the public, but certainly interesting and important for council to see, because it just highlights the possible scenarios you get in if you assign that district to 2024 or 2026. And we can come back to this and go over it if there's confusion, but otherwise we can also talk about this at future meetings. Usually once you decide on which map you like and what the final boundaries of that map will be, then you will determine what the election sequence is that corresponds best to that map. And that will also be adopted at the same time as the boundaries. So with that, I will take any questions first from the council, and then I look forward to hearing feedback from members of the public as well. Thank you.
Any questions by council?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. First question for the Friday deadline for anyone who wants to submit their map. Is that close of business Friday? Just so people know if they're working on a map.
So your staff is not in the office on Monday, is that correct? So I
think it's Friday.
Yeah.
I think they're out of the office Friday, I believe. Is that right, Dave? Okay.
Yeah. So I would say, earlier is better. I can certainly over the weekend get those onto the interactive map, and then we just have to wait for the PDFs, but that would still comply with the legal requirement. So if we get some Friday night at 10 p.m., because that's what everyone wants to be doing the week before Thanksgiving on their Friday night, but we can certainly process those.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess my other question is this the time to give feedback on the maps, or is this just questions about the presentation?
Just at this point, just questions. We'll hear from the public, and then the council will discuss. And then I will listen to all of it intently and take my notes
Okay, thank you.
accordingly.
How many public maps have been submitted so far?
Yeah, thank you. We have not received any public maps yet, so members of the public, even if you want to draw on the back of the agenda and give it to us before you leave tonight, you can do that too. Draw right on one of these, any piece of paper, we'll accept it.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, in the early part of your presentation, you had the screen up that highlighted 3 different requirements, and one was avoid dividing neighborhood or community. And I'm a little confused by that. So what does that mean, avoid dividing a neighborhood? How do you define a neighborhood?
So some larger cities have official neighborhood boundary lines. Absent that, right, not every city has that. It's usually we take public testimony as to what the boundaries of the neighborhood are. In terms of if we're talking about any legal challenges under the California law, right? But when we, the outsiders, consultants, look at it, we look at things like housing type, areas around schools and parks, when was all the housing built, but really in terms of what the residents think, that's going to come from people of Fillmore telling us, hey, it's important to keep this neighborhood together, and that means not drawing a boundary line down this street, instead drawing it down that street.
Okay. And then the second one that I heard, I didn't see it on the screen, but I thought I heard you say identifiable by people. Okay, so can you define that for me?
Yeah, so that just means down we'd want to draw a boundary line, down a well-known street rather than in the middle of, in between two people's backyards, right? We'd want it to go, we want to follow the railroad tracks or follow, the creek, things that people know and can look at when they're walking or driving through town, as opposed to complicated lines that are confusing that, would be hard for the members of the public to know, hey, I'm in this district. We want it to be easy for people to know which district that they're in, to the extent possible.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what you're saying is so that it's easy for people to identify, not identifiable by people.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Good clarification there. Yeah. So that's residents can identify the boundary lines.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes
sense. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none.
I do have just one. It was in the packet for this presentation. We didn't really touch on it. I'm not sure who wrote the ranked choice voting part of the discussion, but I don't know if either Tiffany or Kristen can maybe give a statement on that, since it was presented and we asked about that at the last meeting.
Yeah. Do you want to? Okay. So, those who've been following along do recall that an issue was raised at the last public hearing as to whether or not the move to districts could be avoided by following another remedy in the California Voting Rights Act, which is alternative voting systems. And ranked choice voting falls under alternative voting systems. So essentially that law says, the most common way to resolve an issue of racially polarized voting under this law is to switch to districts. However, you may be able to solve that problem without switching to districts if you can adopt ranked choice voting or another system that may provide better representation than the current system. So some cities have wanted to move to ranked choice voting. Now, in the state of California, that's actually not an option for Fillmore, because Fillmore is a general law city, and that's an option. The alternative voting systems are only options available to charter cities. So a lot of the larger cities in California are charter cities, and they have the option of putting to their voters, hey, do you want to adopt an alternative voting system? Fillmore couldn't do that unless it became a charter city, right? Which would be something that would take some time if that were something Fillmore wanted to consider in the future. So it's not 100% off the table in the future, but there's no legal framework at present for Fillmore to move in that direction.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We're going to open the public hearing. We ask that you speak 3 minutes. We do have a Spanish translator here in case you need a Spanish translator. Our first speaker is Lynn Edmonds.
Hello again, everyone. It's nice to see you. I looked at the maps in detail, and the two issues that I find, one is not really, in the green map, I live on 4th Street, at the top of 4th Street. I love the fact that they go across the highway. I know it divides the large project below, but I often go down to Rio Vista Park at the section that's supposed to save water, and take my dogs down there, and we stand in circles. And they often will say, oh, where do you live? And I'll tell them, oh, you're from the wrong side of the highway. That's a real common thing that's been said. Many times I've heard it. And I am sad that we are finding divisions, and I don't want there to be divisions. We don't have divisions in our community. And I love the fact that that maybe pulls us together, and they may, whoever, if this goes through, the person who's elected there or the people who want to be elected may have a session where they invite everyone to come, and we can be a community that way as a district. So that I really liked. On the green map seems to be the one that holds the North Fillmore best, but it still divides it very much, and I'd like to see if we can't beg and borrow from other sections to allow more people from because that community definitely has a feeling. They feel as one, particularly the larger portion that goes between A and C or A and B. I'm not sure what the other street is. Those streets are hard to see on this map. I had a really hard time with that. And I did try this afternoon to work on the map that I even was here when they showed me how to use them. I could not figure it out. That is just me. But so it's not as friendly. I resorted to paper and pencil. So anyway, those are my two thoughts. One of them is hold that section that divides those two areas so that we can get to know each other. And the other is let's give North Fillmore community a little bit more space and beg and borrow from the other spaces. So that's it. I'm well within my 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Next speaker is Brandy Hollis.
Hi, Brandy Hollis. I was actually going to say the opposite. I was looking at the green map, and my neighborhood's represented in Area 2, and then you go all the way down to the bridges and the new houses, and then the demographic and the type of housing totally changes. Nothing similar neighborhood-wise. To me, it doesn't even make sense. Like, I don't think any of this makes sense, but if you were to go through it's so contrasting. It doesn't make sense to me. Yellow, orange makes a little bit more sense. Just looking at my neighborhood alone, because you literally split my demographic right in half, right there in the middle of my neighborhood in green. So, and isn't that what we're not supposed to do? Right? I don't know. So that was my only comment for the maps. It just, this blue district just doesn't make sense to me. Also, I know we talked about it before, that nobody has gone back and fought it federally, saying, hey, these districts, once they have the districts already in place, they've never been able to go back and fight it federally. But has anybody resisted adopting the districts based on federal law? Because I noticed that when it was presented, it was said that nobody's been able to go back once they're districts and fight it federally. But is that an option for fighting it? Because that wasn't really brought up. So, because federal law always supersedes state law. So I know once it's in place, but before it's in place, is that a possible alternative? That's all I really have to say. Once again, it's baloney, but this green one doesn't make sense to me. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Mary Bennett.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. In regards to this district item, one of you council members has commented that Ernie was our last mayor who was Hispanic. Have you forgotten Manny Minjarez? He was elected and served twice as mayor just a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Paul Copsey. Hopefully
Good
you have a-
evening.
Hopefully you have a shorter one this time.
Yeah, this won't be 16 minutes. So, really quickly, I wanted to respond to a couple things that were said. Ms. Parks noted that general law cities in California cannot use ranked choice voting, except under the CVRA sections 14027 and 14029. It says that the court shall implement appropriate remedies, which are not limited just to districts. They include ranked choice voting, cumulative, and limited voting. So, under a court settlement, if the city was sued, the city could adopt proportional ranked choice voting. You would want to look at Solis versus Santa Clarita in 2013. They were sued under the CVA and they reached a settlement despite being a general law city to implement ranked choice or cumulative voting. Also, another case that you would want to look at is SV Rep versus Albany. That was a similar situation where the city of Albany implemented proportional ranked choice voting as a settlement to a CVRA lawsuit. They were a charter city. The city of Santa Clarita was not a charter city. In both situations, the settlement was agreed upon, and it was regardless of whether or not they had a charter. In looking at the maps, I know they've only been out a very short time, but I looked at some of the demographic information, and it was interesting to me that in 2 of the 3 maps, 5 of the districts were majority Latino, and in the 3rd map, 4 of the districts were majority Latino, and 1 had the opportunity, there's a little bit of a range where the Latino population came in at about 48 or 49%. So compared to plurality at large, which you currently have, where Latino voters have the ability to control all 5 elected seats, on 1 of the 3 maps, there is an opportunity for Latino voters to only be able to control 4 of the seats, and 1 of the seats could go to another group. So, in order for a CVRA lawsuit to win, they need to prove that not only is there racially polarized voting, and not only is there voting dilution, but that the solution is better than the problem that they're trying to solve. Under your plurality at large system, Latinos can elect all 5 elected members. Under the district maps, 2 of them are as good as, but not better, and 1 of them is potentially worse. Which brings me back to a quote that Ms. Parks made in the last meeting that I thought was especially telling. Council member Brogy asked her a question about how districts guarantee racial diversity, and she said very plainly, and I applaud her for her honesty, that districts do not guarantee racial diversity. They only guarantee geographic diversity. So you've got to weigh that out. What do you want for the city? What do you want to do? What's in the best interest of your city and your constituents?
Next speaker is Luann Brock.
Good evening, Luann Brock. I'm going to reiterate something I spoke to last time. And I do believe that part of the law until January 1st, 2024, is protecting the incumbents. Again, I believe all 5 of you worked hard to get your seat up there at the dais. And I think it's important that you all have the opportunity to run again if you so desire when your term is up. The way these 3 maps that have been placed are structured, there are 2 members who will not be able to do that because of where they live. And I asked at the last meeting for a map to be drawn that could include that, so I would like to see that by the next meeting. I will say I tried to use the map tool and technology, and I do not get along, but I found it very difficult to use, so I do appreciate the fact that people can scribble something down. I'm going to also reiterate that I was involved in the school district trustee area drawing, and it was a very interactive process where we sat there and we had everybody around the table. We didn't have to fill out a speaker card. We could work back and forth and say, no, that's North Fillmore, no, that's Los Serenos, no, that's this is, and it through the ability to interact that way, we came up with a consensus. I think that would serve this community much better than the format than we're using. I do believe it was Councilmember Mendez that asked for 5 maps. I could be wrong on that. I think you asked for more than 3 maps. So that's concerning, and that we don't have 5 maps. And so hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have some more options. I believe this community, it's the people that have been coming and showing up that should have as much say as all of you have in the decision-making. We give you our input, but you need to listen to what we have to say. That's the whole purpose of having a public hearing. So I encourage you to take into account what I've asked for again. I did see for the first time tonight the options for council members, and that was probably a result of my statement at the last meeting about the protection of the incumbents, and that is written into the law currently as one of the listed items that you can use to protect your district. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Diane Sutton.
I have no script. Be nice. I have no alternative or no ulterior motive other than I love this city. I'm not going to make any money from my position, and that seems to be quite high on the agenda, changing this districting. I glanced at the maps, very divisive. I don't know what it is about always being a race issue or income issue or whatever. I don't know if there's already been a decision made on this map, these mapping. I knew I was going to just lose my train of thought, but I really think that think that there's a lot of people that think that the Hispanics are marginalized. I don't think so. I think the gringos los creen que ellos, they need to be fixed. Todo el mundo, los gringos quieren arreglar todo el mundo porque los cabezas son muy largos. Is that right? I think that there's always an issue that pertains to the Hispanics, and we're the biggest part of the city, and I don't know why we're giving in to extortion. I hope you haven't made a final decision on this. I don't know where you stand. I don't know if Paul's idea is good. I just think the at-large elections are working for us, and it doesn't make sense to divide up the city. It'll be confusing. People won't understand. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I don't understand this stuff. I don't want to spend time investigating it and understand. I don't even know who my representative is at the state level. And it's always confusing. So this is even going to be worse, I think. And I know you're facing a possible lawsuit. I don't know how to fix that. And I know I'm gasping for the last gasp of air before you make this final decision, but for what it's worth, I think it's a mistake to change. But thank you for the time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rhonda Taylor.
Good evening. I also think that it's a mistake to change. Just wanted to say that out loud, and I have a couple of questions. Did you all make a decision? Because with all the presentations, it seems like the decision is to go ahead to district. Not sure, but it sounds like, and it seems like we're letting the district people, the people that do the maps, make the decision for us, because she's the one that told us about ranked voting. Wow, I didn't think that would be her position. I thought that would be our attorney's position or your position to talk about what that was and if we could or could not do that. So I think that that's a little underhanded. I think that that's, this company should not be calling the shots. I think you all should be. But that's what it seems like to me. It may not be true. You may be doing all the shot calling, but that's what it seems like to us in the audience. Okay, my second question. I think that our school district, the school districts that we have right now should be similar to, if you're going to do a map, should be similar to the maps for the districts for city council. It's already confusing enough when people get to the voting center. They don't even know where the voting center is in the first place. I voted at the Chocolate Church, they say, for the last 10 years. I don't know why it's over here at the school board office. Well, they didn't. They have not voted there in the last 10 years, for 10 years. And that's just one example. They don't know where to go vote right now. So when they get to the voting center, oh my gosh, it's going to be really hard to describe where your district is and which school board member you should vote for or which city council member you should vote for, because people don't think that there's districts now for the school board. And there is. They don't think that there should be districts. Well, I can't change that. I work at the voting center. I can't tell you about your district. I don't know your person running for office. You know, those are some of the questions that people ask us now when we work at the voting center. So just want to say that that's really a hard thing to try to describe once people get there and they're expecting me to help them know which person they should vote for, or how come so-and-so is not on my list to vote for. I really like her. I really like him. I want to vote for that person. It's hard to describe that. My last question is, on two of those maps, I too live on 4th Street. I'm not sure if 4th Street is divided, if it's
Please wrap it up, Rhonda.
if it's one side of the street against the other side, or is 4th Street all in one district? I'm not sure. I couldn't tell by the map. So that's my last question.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and I'm going to open it up to our consultant to answer the questions and to answer any questions that the council has or issues.
Are there specific questions, Mayor, that you'd like to address?
Any specific questions you'd like to address?
There has been no decision made on maps, so I'll tell you that much. The consultant was, I think, originally requested to draw 3 maps. I don't know if the time potentially was an issue to get to 5, but, and especially when it comes to ranked choice voting, it's such a complex issue that we did ask our legal team and the consultant to analyze the information and to present that information. We merely asked them to make sure that it was publicly read. All the information is in the, or their analysis is in the meeting agenda presentation. It's not necessarily something that, like she said, that is completely off the table, but the framework is not there without some kind of legal decision. There's so much going on and so much being presented that this is the public forum for us to do that. Now, I do like the idea of us sitting down and having more of a workshop. The time frame is not ideal. That's one of the major flaws with the CVRA, is that we're running against the clock. And part of the process is presenting that information publicly to you. So I appreciate everyone's comments tonight, but this is part of the process in giving you the information so that we can make a good decision before the end of our safe harbor and when the plaintiff can legally sue us for not making a rapid enough decision. And we're trying to make sure that we don't stumble over this new concept because of the pressure, the timeline. So anyway, I just wanted to make, I didn't address specific questions necessarily, but a city attorney and our consultant are at the beck and call of the council. So they take our direction. We ask them to research information because they're experts at that, and that's why we're paying them to do that. So, but I would like at least a consideration of the potential of a workshop. We did that almost a year ago for setting city goals, but I realize the timing for that is absolutely awful. This whole process is awful, especially going into holidays. I'll be the first volunteer. I'll take a day off of work to come in the middle of the day. I don't care, but I'll at least put that out there. I'm willing to do it, but it's just adds to the unrealistic timeline that we're already on. So just know that it's not because I don't think anybody wants that kind of a process. It's the timing is awful, and the framework is already very poor, especially for a city of our size.
Right. I was going to say, I can completely agree with Chris Garola. We're under extreme timeframes on this. We've had to schedule several special meetings. I'm willing to also. I mean, if a sit down will do it, but I don't think that's going to, I think that's going to be too many people coming at, I want this, I want this, I want this. We can't make all that happen. It's the time frame that's killing us on this. The school board, maybe they had a sit down, but I'm sure they didn't have, everybody at their clamoring at them about what they want. These are all based on legal ramifications. I mean, they're based on what we need to require. So if you want to draw a map on the back of a sheet of paper, give it to them before the time frame's over, and we'll analyze it. But I mean, that's all I can say. I
guess one other issue that was brought up, without doxing Carrie, I'm going to go ahead and just say that, and I think Kristen mentioned it, that we're in the same census block. So right. Legally, we cannot be separated out. Correct? Right. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure they tried to look at it, but it's impossible where they live. I mean, they live literally almost next to each other.
And if I can just add to that too, since we're on the topic of that being the same census tract, I think a comment was made mentioning that it forbids the two council members or candidates who live in, any candidates who live in the same census tract, or if they wind up in the same district, from running. And actually that is not true at all. Anybody can run. Nobody is stopped from running. Nobody is stopped from running. Anyone can run. You just may be running, if two people want to run in the same district, then they're running in the same district. If two people are like-minded and they don't want to run against each other, then one runs and one helps them. So nobody, I just want everyone to be clear, none of us up here, nobody stopped from running again when it is our time to run.
And this is the first time, when we received our council package was the first time we even saw these maps, just so everybody knows. We've not been calling any shots on any maps. These are the first maps that were presented to us.
Address a couple of things that were said. I just wanted to explain that we won't be able to have the same boundaries as the school district because the school district has more territory that's not within the city of Fillmore. So they won't be able to have the same boundaries. But that being said, the registrar of voters knows who you are and where you live, and so your ballot will have the district that you're in. You won't have to know what district it is by number or who's running or anything. When you go to vote, if you go in person versus using the ballot that's mailed to you, it will have the correct voting districts for the school district, for the city, if the city chooses to go to districts, and for the state representatives for everything. So no one will need to track it. I just wanted to clarify that.
And I also wanted to add, even if we do decide to go with districts, when the laws change and if the laws change, we can always turn back this decision if we go willingly. If we fight it and don't do it, then we can't turn back this decision.
Right. What he's referring to is if we decide to go down the district route and then next week, we decide we're going to become a charter city, we can become a charter city and reverse this around. But it's a lawsuit we're in right now. I mean,
Well, we're threatened with a lawsuit. We're not in a lawsuit.
well, we're gonna, if we go the way I want it to go, we'd be in a lawsuit, but hey.
I just want to make sure that the community understands
Right.
that we're not in a lawsuit yet, just threatened with one.
If we are going to be in a lawsuit, we'd be after January 2nd, but that's when our clock runs out.
And I just want to add that, and I've talked to enough constituents out there, emails, phone calls, in person, and I don't like it. And I know that's the consensus I'm getting from the constituents. So
It's bad news for Fillmore all the way around. That's what I believe. I believe it's really good. I believe what Lynn's saying. We're going to be split up no matter what we do here. I mean, I don't like it. I don't like where we're being forced.
And I'll just make a public comment statement, and we've spoken in closed session, and I'll say the same thing out here publicly, is that I myself don't like the process either. The fact of being threatened with a lawsuit, of where we have to change. However, all that aside, if we as a council or community wanted to entertain the idea of districts, I would be for entertaining it. I'd be for entertaining it. I'm not opposed to districts. I don't like the process either, but I'm not opposed to districts. So I just wanted for that to be clear as well.
Any other questions that you want to ask?
I do.
I just
Specific
was
ones.
gonna let you all know that the case of Santa Clarita was raised, and if you'd like more information on that, they are actually an NDC client. They are moving to districts. Those will be starting in 2024. However, they are an interesting case because they have this language in their settlement agreement that says they're going to keep looking into these alternative voting systems, and it gives a lot of different qualifiers, like if we can switch our voting system without spending more than X dollars, and if the state allows us to do it, and if this. So there's quite a lot of if-thens with regard to that, but in the meantime, they are proceeding with districts.
So I do have some comments or questions, I guess, on one of the maps, the potential to tweak. Do you want, is the time now to take those? Okay. So, and I'm going to phrase this with something that you said actually earlier when you were going down how these districts should be formed and sort of the key things to keep in mind. And one thing you said was, one of the first things you said was we should not draw districts that dilute voting power of potential community, dilute the voting power of a community. And maps yellow and orange do just that in North Fillmore, 3 ways. And I, when we came out and I saw them, my first thought was North Fillmore is just divided into 3 different districts. So within a couple of blocks, and North Fillmore, in the area that we're looking, is between A and B Street. That little corner, if you look at the green map, that sort of triangle there, that orange triangle that meets the purple along Telegraph. So that's the middle school. Okay, so that little triangle right there. So orange and yellow, again, the heart of North Fillmore. This is one of our most poorest communities, heavily Latino. I know there are Latinos across Fillmore at high percentages, but this is our traditionally most low-income, disenfranchised, and I don't have the data in front of me, but I don't know if there's been a council member up here representing this particular very distinct, geographically historic community on council. And maybe there has been, but I don't know. But the fact that in maps yellow and orange, it's being divided 3 ways, I think that goes against what you had said earlier of dilution of a particular voting group of a community. So That being said, my comments on this are actually on the green map, which I think is the best of the 3 maps. And it would be a tweak. And this is, again, trying to keep communities of interest together. Specifically, how it divides at Blaine Avenue. I'd like to see that move down 2 streets to, I think, I want to say it's First Street. It's the street that meets the middle school. Yeah.
Yeah, let's pull that open. Hold on.
Okay.
This is. That's yellow. I'm pulling up green now. Okay. So we have 3rd Street and 2nd Street?
2nd Street.
Second
Okay, that's
Street?
it, yeah. So it would be 2nd Street, bringing that into the pink straight across, all the way to where it hits Telegraph. And I know that's a big, dense community, neighborhood there.
Right, and I'm pulling up those population numbers. I know they're almost impossible to see. But in order to do that, right, I mean, you're going to have to cut somewhere else. So
Well,
if you can suggest...
I have suggestions to go all the way around. I knew that. I know that if you take from one, you've got to take from another, take from
You're
another,
good.
or give. So I understand that when you make one tweak to one district, it tweaks them all. I understand that. So that's my recommendation, and that would really make North Fillmore and the north part of town, really, if you go over to the Foothill area, a complete district. So that being said, then of course Orange needs to grow, right? The Orange district needs to grow. So my recommendation is, sorry, I don't want to go too far ahead. Do you want me to keep talking?
Yeah, just to clarify, so if we're talking about red, if you're adding all of that area, you're saying you would take away in the Foothill area?
Well, we'll come back around to that.
What
I was doing was I was just going
clockwise.
I was going counterclockwise.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, counterclockwise.
Right. So since if pink is taking some of orange, then orange has to grow. So then I see the purple giving some to orange, and that being, and I don't know density-wise, I want to see Sespe Avenue. That's a dividing street. Could that top part of Sespe, if you cut it straight across, would that be enough homes and enough population to give to orange?
It might offset it. Yeah, it looks very.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and this is just my suggestion. I know the council members have others or may not be, for that or have suggestions on other maps. Just giving you my input. The purple, now giving to the purple was the one I was thinking a little bit more difficult because it is pretty already compact, and it would mean crossing over into the other side of A Street. But my suggestion is, let's see here. If you can zoom in a little more. My suggestion would be giving purple that lower half of green that really includes Baldwin Plaza, but it's gonna include a lot more homes. We're building on that area near our Rite Aid. And also, it's already been filled in with Citrus Grove. So so basically it would be given over to Central.
Okay.
You do have to do the census data though, so
True.
the homes that haven't been built yet or that were built after the census won't count until the next census.
It won't. Okay. So it might be difficult. This is just an idea. And if
keeping in mind, if you can see here, this is a block.
Okay.
And so you can see how strange, unfortunately, this is one of our problem blocks that's highlighted in the blue there. It literally goes all the way around.
Oh, I see.
There.
Okay.
So you can take basically, north of it for sure.
Okay. Okay.
But this is all very helpful.
Okay.
Keep going.
So this is the concept, right? And I understand that by the streets that I'm throwing out there may not work, but it's just a concept. Then going over to again, we're taking from green, so then green has to be given a bit more. Back up to the pink. So since pink gained some of the orange, can we cut across, like, maybe it's 3rd Street, or maybe above, maybe it is 4th, and that whole little kind of a square, like it looks like the 2 rectangles on top of each other, could that be taken away from pink, right? Because pink gained a little bit of the orange, and be given back to green, or given to green?
The one issue that I see there is that those are very distinctive, like that they back up to essentially a cliff.
True, yeah, geographic boundary, you're right.
They're
but there is sort of a square there, and again, like we talk about geographic boundaries, if you see, I don't know, yeah, if you can only work within that, I don't know if that pink can be divided up. Is that difficult to divide up the pink? That's why it's like that?
Yeah, it is. But you have given me enough to where I can come back to you and say, here's the best I can do.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. And then I don't know if anything had to be done with the blue, but if it does, or if green needs to take from the blue, if you scroll back down again, then like if blue needs some more, another dividing point would be Mountain View. So
Yeah,
that
I agree
if you
with
have
that.
to give blue, that way blue wouldn't be just connected that little bit, how it's, just barely connected
Yeah,
there
rather
at the
than
highway.
Saratoga.
But you could give blue from Mountain View east instead of Pole Creek east.
Mm-hmm.
That was my my input. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is based on trying to, and I know we divide up, every neighborhood is divided up, and it is the best map. If it can't be tweaked at all, I do like the green map. In that it only divides neighborhoods really, hopefully, like in 2 and a half, and doesn't divide North Fillmore into 3 different districts. Thank you.
I have a comment. Just the yellow map is a good example where it almost touches the highway, District 3, but stops at the railroad tracks. And the highway is it is a dividing feature of the town. There's no doubt about that. I think it would almost be more important that rather than crossing the highway, each district, that it at least touches. I think there's not a whole lot that can be done about the northern part of town just with distance, as that will, I think, very definitively be the future of the heart of our town as it continues to grow on both sides. The crossing, I don't know if everybody crosses the highway regularly on foot. It's not easy to do. So I think the idea of crossing, while it sounds good, within a district, it's kind of a false premise to think that it would unify people across the highway. Like something of the actual features of the highway, I think would need to be more unitive. I would like to see what adjustments are made to the green map, but I think that the yellow map comes closest to hitting the major divisions, geographic divisions of the town, without dividing it in weird ways that don't make a whole lot of sense.
And you are saying, just to clarify, that you do think there's a value in having as many districts as can touch the highway,
at least
to touch it.
Yeah.
And I will say I've actually heard that in other cities that have a sort of similar thoroughfare across their town say we want as many districts as possible to get a little, because it's where it's not so much about getting the population as it is where the businesses and the commercial corridor of
Right.
the town is.
So yeah, in that example specifically, District 3 stops at the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And then could potentially come down a little bit further. It might be accounting or not accounting for the development on that side of the railroad tracks, which I believe was after the 2020 census, but obviously that's something we'd have to consider. And correct me if I'm wrong, the deviation, the allowed deviation is up to 10%?
It's up to 10% total, so when you think about that by district, we're like 1 or 2% for each district off
Right.
of the ideal.
If I think the majority, so of future development is within, on the yellow map, within the southeastern and then future north. If there are any deviations, I think those two areas would make the most sense, especially the southeast portion that is currently undergoing the largest development right now. It would, and I believe it was also the area that already had the highest voter turnout, so it would be pigeonholing more people into that one district.
Yeah, and I did try to slightly underpopulate that southeastern area, so you'll see it's in the negative. It's a small buffer, but it's, the goal is that if you go through this process again in 2031, that you would have to make as few changes as possible.
I have a question. I'm not aware, because I've went on this and tried to fudge around with it too, and I can't get it to work. Is there a way you can post these maps so that they can be utilized on the?
Sure.
I mean, you can post the maps.
Yeah, and then people can change
Then
them?
you can fudge around with the maps.
Ooh, I like that idea. Thank you, Mayor.
No, it wasn't. You can sit and you can move it around and figure it out.
Rather than starting from scratch, you're basically starting from a point and tweaking. Yeah, I like that a lot. I can probably get that up tomorrow, so I'll let Erica know.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item number 9B, annex of the five properties from Mass for lighting assessment number 2.
Sorry, I do apologize. One thing, I think we'd either act on it or lay it to rest about having a workshop sit down. I am serious that I'm willing to sit down and do that, but I don't know whether that would just be almost like a committee type thing.
Usually
Two
when
council
we
members.
do a workshop, yeah, you don't want very many council members there, right? Not just because of Brown Act, but also because you want people to speak freely. So we are happy to, if you want to do one in the next week, or if you want to push your decision to December 12th and do one, it would have to be like right after Thanksgiving. We're happy to do that either in person on a Saturday or a weeknight, or we've done virtual workshops. You don't usually, actually get maps out of the virtual workshops, but it can be helpful for members of the public who want to use the online tool and just need a longer tutorial or something like that. So just so you know, that is something we can offer.
I would go along with it if we could somehow manage it time-wise.
I'd go along with it, we can manage it. Can we just appoint somebody, Tiffany? Or do we have to wait till the end of this meeting and then bring it back and then?
I mean, you could just let Dave sorted out. Yeah.
Would it be a modification to the contract?
It would.
Yeah,
It
okay.
would. Because we pay them per meeting, so it would be another meeting. But yeah, you guys can't take action on it since it's not on the agenda. So that's why if you just leave it to staff, like give staff the general direction and then let staff implement it, then we can resolve it.
Would it be a Brown Act violation if we attended?
I mean, if it's a notice public meeting, then you could all be there. But if it's not a notice public council meeting, then I shouldn't have you guys there, all there. But I mean, you can get feedback.
I mean, I'm trying to figure what the purpose is. Trying to figure what the purpose is. If the purpose is to sit down and talk, and if you want to make a decision, I recommend all 5 people be there. Otherwise, you're just going to have 2 council members there trying to reinterpret back. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, if it's just 2 people, then we can go ahead and get it going. If it's 5 council members, we'd want to get it.
Usually the purpose is just to assist members of the public in participating, right? So it's not an actionable thing. But it is an opportunity for members of the public to have a dialogue with the consultants and staff.
So could it just be done like a couple hours before, like in the afternoon before our next public hearing?
You could do that, though it wouldn't generate maps that could be considered during that meeting because they need to be posted 7 days
right,
prior.
so there's not
But
much
you could do it before the next meeting, and with the understanding that any maps generated would have to be considered on December 12th by council. And it would just, in the sense of it being a community forum, you have a very engaged public, and so you're hearing from them. It's not that you're going to suddenly hear more things. It's just, I would say the main benefit would be if it could help facilitate members of the public to draw any maps. Or if you feel that members of the public really need to have a dialogue with me where I answer their questions and it's, something we can. But again, the timing is, with the holiday is, are you going to have people even care enough to show up? So.
Anybody else? Or are we going to go and assign 2 council members to sit instead of 3?
I think if the city just continues, maybe does a social media blast about the deadlines coming up and saying that, hey, we fixed the tool, so now there's a map up, there's 5 districts up there, we can move them around. That's what I see the value that if
That's
people
what I was
want to do.
asking, so we can put them up there and we can just move them, yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I don't know at this point and with the timeline and I'm always for community outreach, but it's got to be developed flyers,
Right.
Put out to parents and through the school district. It's a thing to try and really get a big workshop together, and I don't think it can come together in this timeline.
No, I don't think so either.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to item 9B. And I assume, do we have a presentation on it? No?
Yeah, Roxanne has it.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Good evening. Okay, so on September 26th, this item's for the annexation of 5 different properties into our Landscape and Lighting Assessment District 2. And you may recall that we last discussed this at our meeting on September 23rd, I think it was, but September 26th. And we then initiated proceedings for the annexation and balloting process for these 5 separate non-residential developments into Lighting and Landscape Assessment District Number 2, and we set the date for the public hearing to be tonight, or the public hearings. So this is the public hearing. Pursuant to Prop 218, we mailed notices and ballots to property owners with at least 45 days, like right after that meeting, we mailed out all the notices to the property owners, notifying them of the public hearing and providing the ballots. And tonight, during this public hearing, what we need to do is the city council will consider all objections or protests, if any, through the public hearing process to the proposed assessments, whether oral or written, and then close the public hearing, and the ballots received, which Erica has in her possession unopened, will be opened and read, and a decision made as to, they're all like 1 to 4 ballots in each envelope. There's not a lot. There's 5 separate public hearings. And so tonight will be open a public hearing, see if there are any comments, close the public hearing, open the ballots, make the finding, start the next public hearing. So we just need to kind of go in order, and I think Tiffany can help the process along. But as far as the staff report and why we're doing this, this is Lighting and Landscape District has city street tree maintenance and street lighting, which is maintained by Edison on behalf of the city. And so these 5 properties will be joined into the districts and assessed just for the street trees that benefit their property and or street lights that benefit their property. Some have trees and no lights, some have light and no tree. Some aren't built yet, some are already built. The ones that are already built will be performing a hand bill to prorate and charge them for the rest of this fiscal year. The ones that aren't built yet, they won't be receiving assessment until the improvement is completed and it's added as a quantity to the year that happens. So that's in general what we're up for, and I'll answer any questions about specific, or we can move into opening the public hearings.
Any comments, any questions? Okay. I'm going to read from the script.
Okay.
This is the time and place for public hearing on the proposed annexation of 5 properties into landscape and lighting district, assessment district number 2. We'll conduct a public hearing on each property separately. I now open the public hearing on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th property. Has the deputy clerk received any written comments filed against the annexation for this property?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to address the council on this matter or hand in protest or correspondence? If so, please come forward to the podium, and when you come to the podium, please state your name, address, and present your comments. Seeing there are none, does any member of the City Council have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I now close the public hearing. Will the clerk please open and count the ballots?
Yes. Mayor, there is not a majority protest based on the weighted ballot, so everyone marked yes in favor.
Anybody ready to make a motion?
Mayor, is the public hearing still open? No, okay. All right, so, I move that the city council directs staff to, just want to make sure, for the annexation of the 5 properties and their accompanying resolutions of Fillmore Groves, The Stop, Red Engine Brewing, Rotorcraft Support Incorporated, and Sonic Drive-In.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries. Okay, here's my agenda. Moving on to item number 9C, consideration of the First Amendment to the Agreement of Construction of the Offsite Development Improvements with SDI Foods for the Sonic Restaurant Drive-In and Drive-Thru Project.
Good evening. Okay, so this one ought to be fairly quick too. We had originally issued the off-site improvement agreement for SDI Foods to build the Sonic drive-through project about a year ago. And due to, there's coordination with Southern California Edison, there was coordination with his loans and financing and a bunch of different things that delayed the commencement of construction. And the good news is that they are under construction now. They've started grading and they're mobilized, and they're expecting to be done with the project in about 9 months, but there's still some open-ended things with with Edison. There's a guy wire in the way, and they're trying to work out to get the final design plans. It takes a long time sometimes to get stuff through Edison. And so we want to go ahead and pick up and give this off-site improvement agreement with SDI Foods, Inc. another 12-month period from tonight. They believe they'll be done in 9 months. This gives them a little bit of wiggle room there. And hopefully we won't have to talk about it again, but it's just a simple First Amendment that extends the timeline on the existing off-site improvement agreement. And I'll answer any questions.
Any questions, Roxanne?
I know grading had started. What's the current status?
They've performed some of the rough grading and clearing and grubbing and started some of the overacts, but they really do need to move that Edison guy pole that's in their way before they can do much more. They're already have their Caltrans encroachment permit for the off-site street improvements and working on getting the city encroachment permit for the Orange Grove street improvements. And so we'll get a schedule from them once they have that permit in place.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I will make a motion to approve amendment. What am I approving here?
Amendment.
Completion of public improvements for the Sonic Drive-In Project Development Permit number 18-01, modification number 1. And that's the Sonic Drive-In at 655 Ventura Street.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll set.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, motion carries. We're going to move to item 9D, approve second reading to adopt ordinance number 23955 to amend the Fillmore Municipal Code, Chapter 7.12 and 11.20.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, street vendors are a permitted use in the city as long as you have a health permit and a business license. Tonight's request is a second reading. We'd like to add 2 items to that. A full canopy is not a permitted use.
To reintroduce it.
I'm sorry?
If we change it, we have to reintroduce it.
No, we're not changing anything.
Oh, okay.
It's
Sorry,
the same.
I thought you said that.
I'm
Sorry.
just, nope. So the ordinance identifies large canopies would not be permitted for street vendors, and we're identifying administrative fees for people who would violate this ordinance.
Any questions for Kevin? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Okay, I will move that the council approve the second reading to adopt ordinance 23-955. I'll read the whole title. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fillmore, California, amending Chapter 7.12, vendors, sidewalk vendors, and solicitors, and Chapter 11.20, signs and awnings of the Fillmore Municipal Code to update and supplement the city's penalty provisions for sidewalk vending regulations.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Move on to item number 9E, introductory report of development impact fee, income, and expense per government code sections 66001 and 66006.
Good evening, council members. Mayor Austin, I'm Deborah Cavaletto, Finance Director. Item 9F has staff providing a verbal preliminary review of development impact fees, or DIF, information for fiscal year 2022-23. Staff will continue this report at the December 12th, 2023 meeting by providing additional information and to request the City Council make findings required by state law to allow the city to retain unexpended DIF funds that were collected 5 years or longer. Government Code Section 66,000 authorizes public entities such as the City of Fillmore to establish and collect DIF funds to fund the cost of new or upgraded public facilities needed as a result of new development. The city has 10 categories of DIF, including for city police, public works, portable water, and storm drains. These projects for these range from a patrol car, fencing to well improvements, and culvert replacement. Various methods are used to calculate these fees, including the number of dwelling units or the structure square footage, etc. The most recent DIF update was approved March 6, 2019. Additionally, the section requires that public agencies to report fee information annually within 180 days after the end of the fiscal year. City Council will be required to make findings as listed in the staff report, which will allow the city to carry forward the unexpended DIF fees collected more than 5 years prior to the end of the fiscal year. This item meets the city's goals in the area of finance, fiscal management as good stewards to the public's tax dollars for long-term financial stability. This is the end of my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion.
Just looking for the action, Mayor. Do we have an action, or is it just receive a verbal?
Well, yeah, I think I'll recommend that we receive the verbal introduction as a preliminary review of development impact fees, the income expenses report information for fiscal year 2022-23, and that staff will continue the report at the December 12th City Council meeting. Anything more than that? Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Move on to item 9F, approval of the revocable offer of dedication agreement and grant deed at 970 West Ventura Street.
One more time. Okay. So the property at 970 Ventura Street was partially developed, shall we say, in 2006 when they were originally entitled. They put one building on the site, and there's a pad for a future building that's never been developed. The building that was developed was given a temporary occupancy a long time ago because there was some outstanding items, including some of these right-of-way dedications and different things. The way that the conditions were written, it was a little bit convoluted and hard to figure out exactly how to make all that happen. And I was able to engage with the wonderful attorneys that we have at Alsher and Winder and got it sorted and worked with the property owner very carefully. And so given the entitlement conditions to provide a 5-foot in-fee dedication to the city outside the Caltrans right-of-way over the 5-foot wide sidewalk, And then also to provide a 14-foot wide dedication, which is an irrevocable offer of dedication that we wouldn't accept right now, but it would be a future dedication for when the highway is widened, which includes that 5 feet of dedication for the sidewalk. So there's a little bit overlap between theirs. And then there was a third condition that also said, and by the way, when we widen the highway, the throat of the entrance, like this parking lot has 90-degree parking right when you turn into the parking lot, and there's a landscape median that is a certain length so that you won't have someone like backing out right when someone's turning in and have it be unsafe. And so that condition was written like when the highway widens into that 14 feet, it's going to eat up that landscape throat, and we'll need to move the landscape throat in to provide that separation for people turning into the parking lot, not to create an unsafe condition. And so that's what we set out to accomplish, and what you have before you tonight does exactly that. I think the best, I inserted a picture in the staff report, and there's also Exhibit C, which accidentally was entered twice, so you have a bonus Exhibit C, but there is nothing missing. It's just that I inserted it twice. But what we'll have is there's a grant deed to the city that says I give the city 5 feet of right-of-way in fee right now. And I'm recommending that we accept that 5-foot in fee. It's dedicated right on top of the existing sidewalk that was built when the building was put in. And then we have a separate irrevocable offer of dedication, which is an agreement basically. And this is kind of tricky. It offers to dedicate the rest of the 9 feet, so 9 plus 5 is 14, to the city in the future when we are ready to accept it, because we need to accept it, and we need to accept it in fee to give it to Caltrans when they widen the highway. And that's what we've been doing up and down the 126 with all these frontages between 14 and 20 feet of property has been either dedicated in fee right now for future road purposes, and then it's usually a landscape setback, and we do an agreement with the property owner to continue to maintain the landscaping in that area until such a time as we widen the highway. In this case, since there's access through it, we want it as an irrevocable offer of dedication, because if it was dedicated in fee title now, you'd have to give access through the property, and it just gets a lot more convoluted. So with this agreement, the irrevocable offer stands until we issue a trigger notice saying, hey, remember that agreement that's recorded and travels with the land. We're going to trigger it and then accept your offer, and then that 9 feet becomes city right-of-way in fee title. And then we would own the whole 14 feet, and we could deed that over to Caltrans if and when the time comes. And at the same time, we would have a right to go 30 feet onto the property and reconfigure the parking to handle the throat situation. And that's more of a temporary right of entry, but it's also included in the irrevocable offer agreement. So it gives us that right at the same time that it gives us the right to widen the highway, basically. So that's how it all came together. I hope that's clear. The tricky part is right now as we record this agreement, we'll be filing a certificate of acceptance, but clearly it's a certificate of acceptance for the sole purpose of authorizing recordation of the irrevocable offer of dedication. We're not accepting the offer of dedication, we're just accepting the recording of the irrevocable offer of dedication. So the city attorney's office was really good to make that very clear on the city manager's certificate of acceptance. And so I think this is all ready to go. The developer's survey of record provided the legal descriptions and the plats, and I've had those reviewed and approved by our survey team. And the property owner has already reviewed and agreed to all the documents. So all that's left to do tonight is get your people approval, and then we can get these documents recorded, and they can get their final certificate of occupancy. So,
any questions for Roxanne?
I just want to hopefully clarify something for the public. Is there a current plan, actionable plan to widen the highway, or is this language just meant to allow for that? That's the way I read it, is that it just allows for it versus there is a plan to currently widen the highway, which I don't think there is.
There is no plan at this point, you're correct. Caltrans doesn't have a long-term plan right now to widen the highway either, but the city has for a long time had in our general plan element that eventually we're going to need 7 lanes on that highway, and we've started the process. We've been doing it for the last 25 years, getting ready for what we think is inevitable, but at this point in time, it's not in Caltrans' plan, and there is no plan for it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move that the city council approve the form of an irrevocable offer of dedication agreement, IOD, and approve and accept a grant deed for public street along the frontage of the property at 970 West Ventura Street.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Move on to item number 10, committee, commission, and board reports, and turn it over to council.
I'll make a brief update from 2+2 that Kara and I attended at the end of October. Actually, yeah, I believe it was the same day as our special council meeting. That's why we didn't report on it. Great conversations. Dave and Chrissy Shefferly have been working together and come up with a plan to better utilize all of our sports facilities. That's future stuff, and if Dave wants to speak on it, he can, but they're talking, which is great to see. We also had a presentation that basically mimicked, although the public information from the school board or the school district yesterday at the high school library was actually better, about the new high school gym facility. Measure G is one of their projects of many that are going to benefit all the schools, but that's like the capstone, if you will, of that project. The school is working with the state for the majority, outside of a few things with the city, but the majority of it lies with the state. DSA, as they call it. I don't remember the acronym right now, but there you go. So the state architect for that project. So it's great to see. The city is not involved a whole lot with it, but we are working with them on a few items that are integral to the project. So it's great to see again that they hand in hand work. And then Dave, I don't know if you have a date set or anything for a planned joint session between us and the school district yet, but I know that's something that we're looking at doing hopefully in the near future.
Yeah, Chris and I are meeting Thursday to talk about a number of items. That'll be one on our agenda.
Awesome.
Any other? Gary?
I feel like it's been a really long couple of weeks since our last time we reported out on our other board meetings and responsibilities. So in addition to the 2+2 that I attended with Chris at the school, with the school district, I also, one of the issues that's been on our radar, and we've been working on diligently for the last year, is the Santa Paula branch line with Sierra Northern. And so as one of my responsibilities on VCTC, I sit on the Santa Paula branch line subcommittee. We had a meeting on the 31st and talked more about the trains that are stored, all the things that are going on with Sierra Northern, and we again on November 3rd we had a full VCTC meeting, and the subject came up again, and this is so pertinent to the citizens of Fillmore because of the effect that Sierra Northern is having on with their stored cars. The bridge that's down still, the bridge won't be up now until sometime during the summer, they anticipate. But I do want to report that they, meaning VCTC's, made a tremendous progress on getting Sierra Northern to look at moving the stored rail cars now. And we should see some definite information coming out on that issue within the next week or so. So I was really excited about that, and I was glad to report that out to the community that lives in that vicinity. And then also on the 9th of November, I attended a VCOG, that's the Ventura County Organization of Governments, and we had a presentation done by Patrick Maynard, who most of you know, who's the Director, CEO of Office of Emergency Services under the Sheriff's Department, and he presented a very detailed presentation on the Office of Emergency Services, which is really interesting. So, and then I also wanted to acknowledge our wonderful police department here in Fillmore. They made a trip over to the Sunshine Preschool one morning this week, and they had McGruff, the police dog, if I get his name right, and passed out donut holes, surprised the kids entirely. So there was a good number of deputies that were there, and the kids were elated. They loved the McGruff, and I just want to thank their police department for being so diligent and caring about, our pre-K kids or preschool kids. So thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. This is going to be the last time to be able to do this, so I'm going to do it. City manager's report, city manager verbal report. Big D, send it.
Come on.
Come on.
Come on. All right. It's an inside joke, people. All right. December 1st at 6 o'clock, we're having a holiday tree lighting ceremony. We are going to send an announcement out. We're waiting to finalize a few items for the tree lighting before we do an actual big announcement out. We want to let everybody know at 6 o'clock. It'll be here over at Central Park, right next to City Hall. Also, next week, Thanksgiving week, City Hall will be closed from Wednesday until Friday due to the holiday. That's all I have for tonight.
Move on to item number 12, closed session. The council will go into a closed session because the city is considering whether to initiate litigation in one area. We're going to go to closed session. Council met in closed session. There is no reportable action. We're going to adjourn to our next meeting scheduled at 6:30 on Tuesday, November 28th at City Hall. Meeting adjourned.